Welcome back to the cave for the second part of our Atari Lynx restoration. In part 1 we got familiar with the 1989 handheld, its custom chips Mikey and Susie, and we learned a little about the history of the machine. But now it's time to roll up our sleeves and see if we can breathe life into that old circuit board once again. Here's our Lynx then ready for inspection. It's mounted in our PCB holder with the battery pack still connected down below there. And just to remind you of the problem we had in part 1, taking the button here and reaching around to the on switch, when we press it nothing happens. Even though we can't see the screen, we'd expect the backlight to come on to indicate that power is getting through to it. As also mentioned in part 1, a Lynx which fails to power on is an extremely common fault, and the blame can usually be lay at the door of this component here, Q11. It's also a common fault on the Lynx 2, and you'll find the same component in position Q12. So what is it and what does it do? I'll include a link in the description for the hardcore electronics breakdown, but as I understand it, here's a high-level summary for the purpose of fixing this Lynx. The parts of the component are the source, drain and gate. In this case, pins 2 and 4 are connected and the drain. Using the gate we can control the current that passes from the source to the drain. Applying positive voltage to the gate reduces the resistance between the source and the drain, and when it's reduced to the drain source on resistance, in this case 0.18 ohms, the current flows through to the drain and on into our Lynx. We can therefore check the drain with a multimeter when we press the on button to see if we have any voltage coming through it, and we don't. So I grabbed the hot air gun and began to swap it out. Here's my replacement part. This is part number STD12N06 by ST Microelectronics. Other compatible parts are available, this just happened to be the one I could get hold of. I cleaned up the board ready for soldering. And to aid my shaky hands I did use a bit of tape to hold it into place. And then just popped it back on with some fresh solder. A little more solder than I would have liked, but that will be fine, and I don't want to mess around and risk damaging the pads by fiddling about with it too much, so let's grab the multimeter and see if that's working now. The meter shows that power is reaching both the gate and the source, and when we press the on button, most importantly, there's 5 volts coming through on the drain. Previously that was 0 even when we pressed the on button. You can't see the screen at this point, although I've already had a sneaky look, so let's turn it over and show you what's happening on the other side. After a moment of disappointment I realised I needed to adjust the brightness, and then there it was in all its glory, California Games, showing off the Lynx's 3.5-inch passive matrix display, a screen technology which died long ago, and you can probably see why. I consider it to be impressive for the era and surprisingly still quite playable today, but it's a long way behind subsequent LCD screen technologies. We'll think more on that later, but hey, we've got a working Atari Lynx now, and there's still more work to be done. Our next task then is to fit the missing DC jack. It looks like the previous owner tried to use glue at some point, which isn't a bad idea, but I wouldn't have put it under the jack there. I tried to get the glue off, but without much success. I did get it down enough so that I'm confident the DC jack will sit flush on the board. And here is that replacement jack. It's a through-hole component, and we need to get all 3 of those legs through the holes and get it soldered into place. I've used a solder sucker to get the solder out of those holes, which thankfully came out quite easily, and then I soldered the new jack into place. The moment of truth then, we know that it works on batteries, but will everything be okay when we plug in our 9V DC jack? Place your bets now. We have success, perfect, our DC jack's working just fine, although our picture is upside down, and while the Lynx is upside down, let's hit that flip button just to show you how that works. There we go, the screen's the right way up now. I don't know why, I just really like that feature. Right, what I'd like to do next is reinforce the DC jack with a bit of hot glue. I just want to give it a bit of extra support. I'll be careful with it anyway, knowing it's a weak point, but just for peace of mind. Blob, blob, blob. There we go. With the repairs taken care of, we can now look at some preventative maintenance in the form of new capacitors, and this board is liberally sprinkled with them. I'm going to replace them all, and here are the new ones. Bear with me, this may take some time. Let's have a recap montage, and if I need to point anything out along the way, I'll stop and show you. Can I have my recap music, please? We started this project with a chain of links. Yes, that is the collective noun for links. A chain. Who came up with that? Although they weren't quite complete, we were missing a battery cover and a couple of other bits, so we can make up one complete links. It's easy to pick which front cover. I'll pick the one that doesn't have a hole in the front. This is quite a common problem, owing to the fact that there are two different lengths of screw that go into the back of the links, and if you put the long screw in the short hole, well, it comes straight out the front of the case. I'll choose this rear part simply because it's less worn than the other, although all parts are worn, and we'll talk about that a bit later. When it comes to cleaning, this is surely the easiest refurb that I've had to date. No keys to pull off a keyboard, no leaked batteries, and very few parts to clean. So let's give them all a good scrub with the soapy water and then lay them out to dry before we finally put it all back together, and we can assess where we are with this refurbishment, take it for a test drive and decide what, if anything, we need to do next with it. The felt on the rear battery cover was as worn as a 1970s carpet, so the best thing to do was just to peel the whole thing off. And now I can put it all back together and show you the finished refurbishment, or the refurbishment to date. But before we do that, let's just take a moment to enjoy where we've got to with it and some of the games I've been playing. Let's take a look. So what's the verdict then? I'm pleased with where we've got to so far. I have a working Lynx, which I didn't before, and it's cleaned up pretty well. Granted, there are dings and scratches on it, and you know what, that doesn't bother me. What bothers me more is a handheld console that doesn't look like it's been used. So, serious damage aside, I think that's all part and parcel of how it should look. And you're probably wondering what happened to the second Lynx. Well, I still have it, and no, it didn't have the same problem with component Q11. So I'll continue to look into that, and if I find something interesting, then I will share it with you in a future video. And finally, there's the subject of the screen. I mentioned in part 1 that there's a modern screen that you can put inside a Lynx, and apparently it makes a world of difference. I mean, it can't really get much worse. Under the right conditions, it's playable, but as soon as the sun comes out or you get the wrong angle, it's just nasty to play with. So that's definitely an upgrade that I want to do and I want to share with you, but the price is over €99 shipped to me, so I haven't bought one yet. After all, Christmas is coming and Mrs. Man Cave has expensive taste. I also feel like I need a bigger library than 3 games to play on it to really justify that expense on an upgrade. I don't want to spend €100 on a screen just to play California games. Nevertheless, in its current state, I will be playing it, I will be enjoying it a lot, and I hope to share many future videos with you on this great little system. While I understand why it wasn't a commercial success, when you cast your mind back to the release of the Nintendo Game Boy just 2 months prior and compare the games that were being played on that with what we see on this system, it really was quite a technical feat. A system that should be remembered fondly, if not for the cost of batteries, then just for the sheer tenacity of what they tried to do with it, and they very nearly pulled it off. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe and come to visit again soon for more similar content, and if you really liked it, then why not consider popping over to my Patreon page to help support future videos. Thanks for watching. Take care.